When I was 7 years old, my mother and I packed everything we owned into the back of a rusted station wagon and drove to a small town in western Massachusetts, a place so quiet you could hear the trees breathe. The timing couldn't have been worse. My father had walked out just 3 weeks before. My mother told me he had taken a better job somewhere far away. She told me he still loved me, that he still cared. But even at 7 years old, something in the way she said it, the way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes, told me the truth. He was gone, and he wasn't coming back. It was Halloween week when we arrived. I started at my new school on the morning of October 25th. As stubborn as only a grieving 7-year-old can be, I refused to let my mother walk me. She frowned, studied my face for a long moment, then agreed, but only under one condition. Okay, but we walk the path together every evening before school starts, and you promise me, you stay on the trail. She had found a small 2-bedroom cottage less than a mile from the school. It was a nice enough place. Old wood floors, a stone fireplace, trees pressing close against every window. But with my father gone, no place could really feel like home. The evening before my first day, the two of us walked the forest path together. The sun was already low, bleeding orange through the branches, but the trail was clear and wide. Leaves crunched under our feet, and the air smelled like wood smoke and coming winter. What a perfect little walk, my mother said, glancing around with something close to happiness. Can you believe this house was still available? I said nothing. We used to have family here, you know. I really do like this place, Jim. I kept walking. The next morning, she made pancakes. She must have seen the nerves on my face because she sat down next to me before I could even pick up my fork. You're going to make friends here. I have a good feeling about this place. Looking back now, I still don't understand how she did it. How after everything, after being left behind, she could still sit across from her frightened son and smile like that. I just hope that someday I'm half as strong as she was. I made my way down the trail just as we had practiced. The morning was cold and gray, and the bare trees cast long shadows across the path. When I arrived, a tall teacher with thick glasses greeted me at the door and guided me to my classroom. 10 other students were already seated. The teacher began talking about the year ahead, but no one paid much attention to me. They were all buzzing about Halloween, costumes, candy, plans. I sat there, invisible, listening to a conversation I wasn't part of. But then there was one girl. She sat 2 rows back, slightly apart from the others, and I noticed her right away. Brown hair, glasses. There was something quietly different about her, the way she sat still while everyone else moved. When I glanced back, she caught my eye and gave me a wide, warm smile. I tried to smile back. It was hard. She was that pretty. I turned around and stared at the front of the room, but I wasn't hearing a single word the teacher said. School ended at 3 o'clock. I grabbed my bag and rushed out toward the forest path, already rehearsing how I would tell my mom about the girl who had smiled at me. I was moving fast, too fast, when my foot caught on something and I went down hard, skidding across the dirt and scraping my knee open. I sat up, wincing, and looked back to see what had tripped me. It was a crow, the largest crow I had ever seen, just lying there in the middle of the path, completely still. Not injured, not sleeping, just placed there somehow. and his eyes were wrong. I couldn't explain it then, and I still can't now. They were the color of old copper, and they caught the light in a way that made them seem almost aware. I leaned in closer to look at it. "Hello, I know you from school." I shot upright. Standing just a few feet away on the trail was the girl from class. She was watching me with an amused expression, her head tilted slightly to one side. I straightened up as fast as I could, trying to look like I hadn't just been examining a dead bird on the ground. Yeah, I think I saw you today. I'm Jimmy." She smiled again. "I'm Margaret. Walk with me. How's your leg?" "Fine," I said quickly. "It's nothing." We walked together through the trees. She told me her family had lived in this town for some time, longer than most, she said, and that there was another path behind her home that also cut through the forest to school. By the time we reached my house, it felt like we had known each other for years. She stopped at the edge of my yard and looked up at the cottage. "Can I see inside? You made it sound so nice." I hadn't said anything about it, but I knocked on the door anyway. My mother answered, looked at Margaret, looked at me, and raised one eyebrow with a smile she was trying hard to contain. "Well, you don't waste any time, do you, Jim? Are you going to introduce the young lady, or just stand there?" My face went red. "This is Margaret. She lives around here. We met at school." "Hello, ma'am," Margaret said pleasantly. "I wanted to see your house. My family lives here too. Nearby, I mean." "Come in, dear. I just this instant finished a batch of cookies." The three of us sat around the kitchen table, and somehow the subject turned to Halloween. "What are you going as, Margaret?" "A witch," she said. Then she paused and corrected herself. "I wanted to go as a witch, but my family has a business trip this weekend, and the woman who usually watches me called this morning. She has the flu. They're still trying to find someone, but..." My mother set down her coffee cup. "Well, if it's all right with your parents, you'd be more than welcome to stay here and come with us." I looked at my mom. I had never loved her more than I did in that exact moment. "What do you think, Jim?" "Yeah," I managed. Yeah, great idea." Margaret said nothing. She just smiled. My mom drove Margaret home to meet her parents and ask permission. When she came back, she sat down across from me. "It went well. Her mom and her aunt take care of her. They live in a sweet little cottage just down the trail. They thought it was a wonderful idea." She paused. "I do have one question for you, though." "Homework," I said, already standing. "Got a lot of it. Love you." I closed my bedroom door behind me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Halloween was only days away. I had made a friend. For the first time since my father left, something felt almost right. I closed my eyes. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought I was dreaming. That loose, half-aware state where shadows take shapes, and you're not quite sure what's real. But then my eyes focused. In the corner of my room stood a tall, slender man. Long gray hair, a thick gray beard. He was facing the window, his back mostly toward me, completely still. And in his hands, held loosely at his side with both fists, was a large axe. Dark stains ran along the blade. I did not move. I did not breathe. After what felt like a very long time, I pulled the blanket slowly over my face and lay there in the dark, listening to the silence of the room, praying he wasn't moving closer. I must have fallen asleep eventually, because when I woke up the next morning, he was gone. The room was bright and ordinary. Birds outside. My mother's voice in the kitchen. I almost convinced myself it had been a dream. He came back the next night, and the night after that, and every night that week. Some nights he stood at the window and stared out into the trees for hours without moving. Other nights, he paced slowly back and forth across the room, his lips moving as though speaking words I couldn't hear. I watched him from beneath my blankets, too terrified to scream, too terrified to look away. The night before Halloween, he finally turned. He looked directly at me. His eyes were pale, almost colorless, and they found mine in the dark without any hesitation, like he had always known exactly where I was. He took one slow step forward. I pulled the blanket over my head and didn't look again. Halloween arrived. I almost told Margaret everything. Several times I opened my mouth and stopped myself. I didn't want her to think I was unstable. I didn't want to lose the first good thing that had happened to me since my world fell apart. We went house to house through the neighborhood as the sky darkened and the wind picked up. Margaret wore a pointed black hat and carried a small plastic cauldron. I tried to be present. I tried to laugh at the right moments, but somewhere underneath all of it, I was dreading what the night would bring. Back at the house, my mother had set up a sleeping space in the living room. Margaret on the couch, me on a blanket on the floor. We sorted through our candy and talked until our voices got slow. My mother leaned in from the hallway. "I'm right in the next room if you need anything. Either of you." She clicked off the hall light. The storm came in around midnight. Wind rattled the window panes. The trees outside groaned and bent. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, telling myself that the man had never left my room, never come into the rest of the house. He was a dream, a shadow, not real. "Jimmy?" Margaret's voice came from the couch, low and slightly embarrassed. "You awake?" "Yeah. I can't sleep. It's freezing. Do you have another blanket?" I thought for a moment. "There's one in my room." The words were out before I could stop them. I lay there in the silence and thought through every other option. I knocked softly on my mother's door. No answer. The storm too loud, her sleep too deep. I thought about calling her name, but Margaret was right there, and I was trying so hard not to seem like a frightened child. "Didn't you say you had one in your room?" I took a slow breath. "Yeah," I said. "I'll get it." I opened my bedroom door carefully and stood in the threshold for a long moment. The room was dark. The window rattled in its frame. Nothing in the corner. Nothing pacing the floor. I crossed quickly to the closet and began feeling through the shelves for the extra blanket. Behind me, the door swung shut. I went completely still. The wind screamed against the house. My fingers stopped moving. Every part of me went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. Slowly, I turned around. It was Margaret. She had followed me in and was standing with her back against the closed door. She gave me a smile, the same smile from that first day in class. "It's just you," I breathed. "Who were you expecting?" she said. "The boogeyman?" I heard the soft click of the lock. The moonlight from the window shifted as the clouds moved. And in that pale silver light, I saw her face change. She was taller than she had been a moment ago, much taller, her shoulders broader. The lines of her face deepened, then aged, then kept going, until what stood before me was an old woman, ancient and grinning, with hollow eyes that had seen centuries of darkness. In one hand, she held a long knife. "Be careful who you invite in, Jimmy." Her voice was like dry leaves tearing. "Didn't your father ever tell you that?" I stumbled back against the far wall. I tried to scream for my mother. Nothing came out. No sound, no breath. My legs refused to hold me. My arms dropped to my sides. She raised one hand, almost gently, and I felt myself slide forward across the floor toward her. Not walking, not falling, just moving, pulled like something on a wire. She lifted the knife above her head. She was still smiling. Then she stopped. Something at the window caught her attention. Her head turned, sharp, sudden, like an animal hearing a sound no human ear could register. And for the first time, I saw fear move across that ancient face. She hissed. She lunged for the door handle, clawing at it with both hands, her body bent and frantic. She didn't get it open. He stepped through the window like the glass wasn't there. The tall man, the gray-bearded man with the axe. He crossed the room in 2 strides and took hold of her with one hand. She screamed, a sound I will never be able to describe or forget, and he brought the axe down hard. She tried to crawl. He placed one foot on her back, raised the axe with both hands, and finished it. The room went silent. He gathered what remained of her, all of it, and carried it out through the window into the storm. I stood at the glass and watched until the darkness of the forest swallowed him completely. I tried to wake my mother. I called her name over and over, and she didn't stir. I checked that she was breathing, that she was safe, and then I went back to my room and stood at the window for a long time. Eventually, I heard her door open on its own. I ran to her and held on. "Morning? You two have fun last night?" She looked down at me, surprised by the hug. "Tell Margaret breakfast will be ready in 2 shakes. Is she still asleep on the couch?" I pulled back. I looked at her face. "Her mom picked her up," I said quietly. "Early." She nodded and went to start breakfast. That was the beginning of understanding what the world actually was. I'm older now. I have a family of my own. My son was born a few months ago, and I've never spoken a word of any of this to my wife. She doesn't need to carry it. Not yet. But I think about it, especially around Halloween. A few days after that night, my mother had taken out an old photo album, the kind with thick plastic pages that crinkle when you turn them. She was flipping through it slowly when something on one page made me reach out and stop her hand. "Who is that man?" She looked at the photo. "Him? That's your great-grandfather." I stared at the image for a long time. It was him. The gray beard, the long face, the pale eyes. I slept better after that. I would still see him sometimes, standing at my window in the dark, watching the tree line, his outline barely visible against the night. He never looked back at me again. He just watched. Whatever Margaret was, she wasn't the last. Over the years, I've come to understand that certain things are drawn to certain families, certain bloodlines. I don't know why ours. I've stopped asking. It's Halloween night as I write this. My son is asleep in his crib across the hall. I've been standing at the window for the last hour, watching the forest beyond the yard, feeling the familiar weight of something moving through the dark toward us. But I'm not afraid, because I can see him out there too, tall and still among the trees, axe at his side, facing outward. We are not alone. We have never been alone.